Hello and welcome to Beyond Top 10 Tennis. My name is Dr. Ashley Berge and I'm your host. If you're not familiar with my work or would like to learn more about it, head on over to AM8 International, the first tennis lab of its kind worldwide that is centered on delivering top 10 tennis rankings and is 100% backed by science. This season, we're embarking on something new, something fresh, what I've been holding back, changeover segments. We'll deliver how to beat the best tennis players in the world and or how the best players in the world are winning with top 10 to Grand Slam differences. If you want more, that's where my 14 books come into play. So be sure to dive into them. You can find them on AM International or Amazon. So irrespective of you're based in the world, alongside my 180 plus episodes now to date. It's a new frontier and I'm no longer holding back. So as always, buckle in and enjoy the ride. Welcome to another edition or special edition for the Australian Open of Beyond Top 10 Tennis. And we are live. So again, we've only just started prior to the Australian Open, or essentially we rolled off or kicked off this season with that new format. So look, if you've been with us for some time now, thank you so much. I'd love your feedback to see how that transition's been going. If you are new, send it through as well, how you've been finding those live editions. A little bit rough around the edges, but getting to you a little bit quicker. Again, could be some delays in there. I think our prior two episodes, we had an issue with the video and audio overlap. I'll just say a couple of oopsies happened, but I still wanted to make sure the content was there for you to go through. So I'd really encourage you to turn that video off, because if you're like me, it's probably going to frustrate you when you're seeing the overlap where it's not syncing correctly. But I do believe we have corrected those issues now, but I'll stay on top of that. All right, so we've got all third round to round of 16 results to go over. Quarterfinals have just kicked off. I was going to get back to you after third round, but since I'd shared with you the potential analytics for round of 16, I thought I'd hold off to give you a double whammy as far as those data points are concerned. It's bear with me, because it's going to be a little bit conflicting when I share third round to round of 16. The analytics we had penned down, but obviously because of the success rate, we're looking at around between 70 to 80%. There is a drop off in those percentages because I didn't come back to you prior. So we're really going off, I will say, partial results. So we'll correct that as we go through quarterfinals onwards today. All right, screen's over here. And just so you're familiar, we're going to kick off with the WTA Tour before we then progress to the ATP Tour. Most of these analytics actually fall into play from who was going to make the round of 16. Although we have upsets on both sides, and we will dive into that later. I'm going to try to keep today's episode nice and compact, so let's see how we go. We'll get right to it. As far as changeover segments are concerned, I'm going to hold back till later because I have been penning some down whilst also enjoying the results and watching it, the tennis, to make sure I can share, I guess, those additional insights with you along the way. All right, Sabalenka Potapova, I really like this match. What it showed me is that how close Sabalenka got to almost falling, but those clutch points mattered. And so we know fourth round, and we'll get to, I'll do third round, then round of 16, fourth round after. On Bocco Torsen, this was a thriller. Last episode, it came to you live, and we just missed out on who got the win. But again, could have gone either way. We did have Bocco to progress, so well done. Absolutely, I think this is her first Grand Slam. She is correlating with, I think, her level of play. We're really seeing it fall into action now, especially this season. She's really started with a bang. I would say top 15, here we come, especially after the Australian Open. Putintseva over Sonmez in 3. Some of the best tennis I've seen Putintseva play, although that and a different story in the next round. And this is the biggest upset of the third round, was Jovic over Paolini. 6-2, 7-6. Paolini started to find her game in the second. a little bit too late. And Jovic, I think, with this win, really solidified, I think, her place, not only inside the top 30, how far she's come the last 12 months, even 6 months, really. Absolutely on the cusp, I'm going to say, of joining the top 20 after the Australian Open, without a doubt. I think we will see that skyrocket there, and it'll be a case of if she's going to repeat or replicate those type of results come, say, Miami, Indian Wells, etc. All right, Gauff over Baptiste. I love this because Baptiste really brought it out of the firing blocks, but then Gauff, she just found her ground. She did get the win. Makova over Lynette. Makova looking very dangerous there. Svitolina over Schneider. Great match there. Svitolina pushing through. Andreeva over Ruse. Solid. Pegula over Selavateva. Straight sets. Keys over Pliskova. Straight sets. Wang over Noskova was the other biggest upset on the women's side. 7-5, 6-4. And I think when we get to the fourth round, you'll see why. So well done to Wang. Definitely one to watch. Anisimova over Stern, straight sets. Rybakina over Valentova, straight sets. Mertens over Batakunkova, qualified their straight sets. Look, this was the biggest surprise packet, again, for Australian tennis too. Maddie Ingles, a qualifier, got the walkover, Osaka, abdominal strain. Interestingly enough, a similar thing happened on the men's side, but from the fourth round to the quarters. I'm sure you're familiar, but we will go over that when we get to the men's side. Swiatek over Kalinskaya. This match was just wow. Look, Swiatek was on, then she was off. Kalinskaya then was off, then was on, then was off. Look, Swiatek out of the blocks firing. Then she fell back. Kalinskaya just found that opening. And then last or third set, Swiatek found her rhythm again. It's quite perplexing when you look at it from the outside, especially the score lines. There's a definite gap, and I've spoken about this before, more so than probably other players, because I find it very fascinating. Rather than keeping at that level, there's those dips, and my concern is that is a really big window for players like Sabalenka, like Gauff, Keys as well, Pegula, Rybakina, to take advantage, because those type of players won't give you those same windows. So Swiatek needs to be on that whole time. So I think there's a risk there. So I am curious now to see what's going to happen in the next rounds. Probably not as favorable, or the data's not as really with that nudge as much as it would have been, could have been, purely because we're seeing, I'm going to say from more of a mental standpoint of sustainability of that baseline has been fluctuating. All right, all third round results done. I'll give you the fourth round, and then we will go over, and yes, it's a lot of busy work there. We will go over that. All right, so fourth round, Sabalenka over Mboko. Yes, straight sets. Mboko in that second set definitely came back. But Sabalenka was able to close out that tiebreak. Jovic over Putintseva, probably the biggest surprise, not so much in the result, but how brutal Jovic was. 6-love, 6-1. Putintseva couldn't even get a game in. Well, she got one game in, but Putintseva's level dropped, but Jovic just kept her foot on the pedal, and that's what I want from Swiatek if we're going to see multiple Grand Slams. Predominantly, we're seeing that more so from Sabalenka, although she has been pushed a lot. So, those tie breaks, for example. All right, Gauff, Makova. Look, good match. Look, 6-1, 3-6, 6-3. Gauff obviously with that win, but Makova obviously didn't come out of the blocks firing. Closer in those last two sets. Svitolina over Andrina. We did have this on paper. Progressing through. Svitolina just did not give up. Again, that's what I want to see from all players. Pegula over Keys, 3 and 4. Again, didn't settle. All right, she didn't take her foot off the pedal. 3 and 4. Anisimova Wang, similar story. She was so lucky, I'm going to say, to get that tie break. There's only really a break in there, 7-6, 6-4, but well done, Anisimova. Rybakina over Mertens. This was probably the most brutal one because how well Mertens has been playing, how well she played at the United Cup. Rybakina 6-1, 6-3. Playing some of the best tennis I've seen her play in some time, if not before. I think just really found that groove again. Had that lull, obviously, around this time last year, for the first half of last season. But I think Rybakina could be dangerous. There'll be a lot to tell next round. All right, Swiatek over Inglis, 6-love, 6-streak, as anticipated. But in all fairness, we need to talk about the level. Very big difference of the level. And you could arguably say Jovic over Putintseva, it was 0-1. Different, similar level there, but there was probably, for my liking, too many points Swiatek let Maddie get in on. I don't want to all credit to Inglis for getting those games, but I feel like Swiatek could have closed that out quicker if she was more, I'm going to say, ruthless in a nice way, and dominated more of those points. And I am being a little bit harsher here purely because I can see what these players are capable of, especially when they're some of the best in the world. All right, which brings us then to the quarterfinals. Underway now. There is a match, a quarterfinal live at this stage, but I don't want to spoil it. Either way, that it is underway. The player in the lead, I will say, we will tick off as progressing before the scoreline is shown, just to be clear and transparent. All right, so all those results I've given you. Now let's head down to what we had penned down. All right, so Sabalenka was going to play Potapova. So we had Sabalenka to get through. We had Mboko to get through over Torsen. We had Putintseva to get through over Sonmez. But no, we had Paolini over Jovic, but Jovic did get through. We had Gauff to get through over Baptiste. We had Makova over Linette. We had Svitolina over Schneider. We had Andreeva to get through over Ruse. We had Pegula over Segnativa. We had Keys over Pliskova. But no, we had Noskova over Wang, but Wang did progress. We had Anisimova over Stearns. We had Rybakina over Valentova. Mertens over Batakonkova. And we obviously had Osaka over Inglis, but because of that walk over Inglis, and Swiatek over Kalinskaya. So as far as our round of 16, so third round to round of 16, almost all, we had 13 of a possible 16. Keep in mind, so that's the Jovic got through over Paolini, Wang over Noskova, and because of the walk over Inglis over Osaka. So that's still an 81% success rate. Obviously, we're factoring in if there was not that walkover, percentages would have been higher there. So late 80s we would have been looking at. But as far as round of 16 to quarters, so recall last episode, I gave you those quarters as well. Although of the 13 that progressed through, bear with me, there was only 6 possible. Instead of 8, there was only 6 because we had Paolini, for example, to progress and Noskova to progress. So irrespective. So of those 6, there was only 5 of the 6. So that's an 83%. The one player that missed out was Andreevas because Svitolina did get that win. So we had Sabalenka progressing, Gauff progressing, Svitolina got it over Andreeva, but we did mark Andreeva there. Obviously, we had Paolini, but Jovic got through. We had Pegula over Keys. We actually had Noskova to upset Anisimova, for example, but because Wang got through, that changes Anisimova getting through. We had Rybakina over Mertens, and we had Swiatek over Osaka, but actually was Inglis. So that's an 83%. Not too bad. Let's hold off. Actually, no, let's do it now. Quarterfinals. Who are we looking at? So you can pause your screen, look at all the work that we've done together there. When we're really looking at, see, this is just wow. Actually, no, we're going to hold off. I'm going to hold off and we're going to do it all together until that has wrapped up. So let's head on over to the ATP Tour. So the men's side, so we go even, and then we'll look at quarterfinals, semifinals, and potential champions, because I think we might hold off and wrap up that or the quarters, semis, and finals all in one, rather than pausing to give you those finals. So that's still a bit of that predictability, rather than, I will say, increased certainty. So I'm just going to do that. I'll say for ethical way, Medvedev was down, if you recall, 2 sets to love, but I still shared with you I'm going to pick Medvedev. He just has a really great track record of coming back. Although I'm going to say his next match was probably the most brutal that I've seen a player topple him in some time. All right, Teen upset Borges. We had Borges through. Borges has made round 16 before. I don't believe Teen's actually made the round 16 at a Grand Slam before. Straight sets. That first set tiebreak, though, 11-9. Huge result for Teen. All right, Mazzetti over Macaque. We actually had Macaque with how well he'd been playing. I believe he made the finals, I want to say, in Adelaide. 5-setter, though, Mazzetti. Big tennis there. Fritz over Wawrinka. Look, yes, Fritz on paper would have been great if Wawrinka could get a line, but hey, it went to 4 tiebreak, and the first set that Fritz got, second set Wawrinka got, and then Fritz got the last 2. Really only a break of serve and those last 2 sets. All right, Menzikova Quinn in 3. Djokovic over Van der Zen, Schulp, straight sets, tiebreak in that 3rd. Shelton over Vachereau in 3. Rudd over Silic in 4. Daderi over Kakanokov. That's an upset. In 4 sets, we did have Kakanokov to get through. Sinner over Spiritzi in 4 there. All right, so focusing on, we'll say, the 4th round now. So round of 16 results before we have a look at the data points. All right, Alcaraz over Paul, straight sets. Look, 7-6, 6-4, 7-5. It was close, closer than probably anticipated, but I think Paul really gave Alcaraz a good run there. All right, best tennis I've seen Alex play so far this Australian Open over Bublik, 6-4, 6-1, 6-1. That's the level he needs to bring against Alcaraz. All right, Zverev over Surundolo, straight sets. Teen over Medvedev. This is the biggest anomaly, surprise, I'll say, similar to Jovic on the women's side. 6-4, 6-love, 6-3. Got an O set over Medvedev. Medvedev, I think, just didn't know what to do. We don't typically see that, and we're so well done, learner there. Mazzetti over Fritz. This was surprising. Fritz wasn't able to sustain that level. I think he is carrying a bit of a nickel, but Mazzetti, just well done. He only came off surgery a couple of months ago, I think. He's been working his way back, and what a performance. First Grand Slam, I think, since surgery, unless potentially he missed the US Open, but I want to say maybe he didn't or did, but this is, I think, really good form. All right, and this is the walkover. Djokovic, half his luck. Walkover, Benzik had to withdraw. Similar reason to Osaka with an abdominal strain. So Djokovic is going to have fresh legs that encounter over Mazzetti. Be interesting to see how Mazzetti pulls up. That is going to be tight. Shelton over Rudd. I confess, I went to bed halfway through this match last night. Really thought Rudd was going to bring it home after that first set, 6-3. But no, Shelton, 6-4, 6-3, 6-4, the lows last 3 sets. Looks like there's potentially going to be a break of serve each in them. But yeah, no, sorry. I went to bed at 1 set apiece in all fairness. But yeah, well done, Shelton. I think he could really take it to Sinner in the next round. Sinner over Darderi in 3. Darderi, look, 7-6 in that 3rd set. I'm going to say Sinner kind of slipped that level. Darderi was able to find that groove, but well done to Sinner. All right, let's have a look at this. Alcaraz over Moutet. Yes, we had that. Paul over David Fokina. Yes. Bublik over Chevrolet. Yes. Look, Dimonor over Tiafoe. Yes. Zverev over Noria we had. Surundolo over Rublev. We did have Rublev. Medvedev over Razan we had. We had Borges over Teen, but no, Teen did get through. Remembering Borges took out Ogul Elisame. We had Macaque actually to get through over Mazzetti. So well done to Mazzetti getting through. That was a bit of an anomaly, just going off how Macaque had obviously been playing in the lead-up. We did have Fritz over Wawrinka. We had Mensik over Quinn. We had Djokovic over Van der Zen Schulp. We had Shelton over Vachereau. We had Rudd over Silic. We had Kakanokov over Darderi. So well done to Darderi getting through. And we had Sinner over Spiritzi. All right, so that is round of 16. So when we're looking at third round to those progressing to the round of 16, 12 over 16 there. So the ones that missed out, or Rublev fell. So Surundolo got through, not anticipated. Teen got through over Borges. Darderi got through over Kakanokov. And Mazzetti got through over Macaque. I think 2 of them were relatively tight. So 75% we're going off because we did have some anomalies there. I'm still going to be okay with that 70%. The next one is more of a, I'll say topsy-turvy there. Round of 16 to the quarters. All right, we had Alcaraz over Paul. Yes, we had Dimonor over Bublik. Look, we had Zverev over Rublev, but it was over Cerundolo. We had Borges, but his team got through Medvedev. So we had Medvedev, but team did get through. Big upset there. All right, we had Makak, but no, Mazzetti was in play, and Fritz. We had Fritz to get through, but Mazzetti got through. Djokovic got through over Menzies because of the walkover there. We had Rudd over Shelton, but Shelton did get through. We had Sinner over Kakanakov, but it was actually Darderi, so Sinner did get through. So of the 12 possible, remember 12 of the 16 got through to the round of 16. We had 8 possible, so we actually had all players still marked off to progress to the quarters that were going to potentially progress, or that was 5 out of 8. Don't really like the statistic, but you know I'm transparent with the data. 62%, because of those 3 upsets that really brought that down. The 3 upsets: 10 over Medvedev, Mazzetti over Fritz. We know how well Fritz can play on hard court, and I think Mazzetti, if it was clay, absolutely. But Mazzetti's really coming into his own, I think, on the hard court. And Shelton over Rudd. I think that was always maybe 50-50, but look, Shelton, I believe, won Auckland. Rudd started off well at the United Cup. So, look, also only 3 of the matchups stayed. So that's kind of interesting, as in Alcaraz, Paul stayed, Bublik, Dimonor stayed. Zverev was not Rublev, it was Cerundolo. Medvedev was not Borges, it was Team. Sinner was not Kakanakov, it was Darderi. Shelton, Rudd stayed. Djokovic was the walkover with Menzies. And Fritz, we had Makak, but it was Mazzetti. So it was a little bit of a scramble from that perspective. Most of the upsets were those who didn't make the round of 16, and it kind of changed the field from that perspective. All right, so that's actually all the data there. If you want to do a pause and zoom in. So looking at the quarters, like who we have down for the quarterfinals, for example, and I'm going to get a fresh page here. Sabalenka Jovic, even though this match just finished, you did hear me say a short time ago I was going with the person I was going to pen down. I'm going to say Sabalenka over Jovic. Golf and Svitolina, this is actually really tough. Purely because part of me, Golf, Svitolina played so well. So, look, I actually think this could be closer than anticipated. I'm actually going to go with Svitolina. And 100%, I think I'm going to say there's bias there. I'd love Svitolina to have a breakthrough. You've heard me on previous episodes say how long she's been in the top 10. Not at this stage, but she was a top 10 player when Serena was the best, winning the Grand Slams. She's been around for, I think, longer than people think. At such a young age from there. It's a tough. I think that's actually 50-50 because we have seen Golf push to 3. If Svitolina gets out of those blocks quickly. But look, also if Golf just gets out of the block and does not relent, I think that could be straight sets as well. All right, Pegula, Anisimova. This is tough. Again, going with what I really think would be a big breakthrough for Pegula. I'm ticking off Pegula. And I think that's 50-50. Look, can Anisimova make 3 Grand Slam semifinals essentially in a row, potentially from Wimbledon, US Open, Australian Open? I definitely think she has the capacity. But we saw some weak points in that match against Wang, in all fairness. Probably not the cleanest, but she's dangerous. But how I saw Pegula over Keys, that was just a really nice match. And she almost made it look easy, in all fairness. And Keys was not playing bad. So let's see. I think a lot of these quarters are going to be very close. Rybakina and Swiatek. Now, look, this is hard. If Swiatek plays how she played when she got those sets 6-1 and 6-1, Absolutely. If she plays like the level she played in that second set when Kalinskaya got 6-1 against her, it's going to be Rybakina. So I'm calling Swiatek. Keep in mind, though, we have all six top players in the quarters. Anomalies are obviously Jovic and Svitolina. That's it. And Svitolina essentially could be top 10. Jovic's on her way to top 15 this season. I'm going to say absolutely. But that's why it is actually normally not this tricky as far as data is concerned at the quarterfinals, but this is big. Look, let's say Sabalenka and Svitolina do get through. You need to go with, say, Sabalenka. If Gauff gets through against Svitolina, you need to say that's actually probably 50-50 if it's a Gauff Sabalenka. I really think that's 50-50. But you know what I've noticed so far this Australian Open, how well Sabalenka has been, I'm going to say, protecting her emotions on court. She means business, and this is probably the most clear-headed I've seen Sabalenka at a Grand Slam. I think she really is dangerous, especially factoring that in. Pegula Anisimova. Let's say Pegula does get through and Swiatek over Rybakina. Look, this is so tough and 100% biased. I'm going to say Swiatek, even though it is 50-50, because I would absolutely love Sabalenka and Swiatek to meet in a final. We have not seen that for some time. And I also think if Swiatek is going to get the Australian Open, the one she's missing, it'd be amazing for her to win it over Sabalenka. If Sabalenka is going to win her third Australian Open, equally awesome to get it over Swiatek. But it could be a repeat of years prior when Sabalenka won over Rybakina, for example. Pegula, could she make another Grand Slam final? Potentially, it's there. I think what's so exciting, Sabalenka's got a Grand Slam, Gauff's got a Grand Slam, Pegula's a finalist, Anisimova's a finalist, Rybakina, Grand Slam, not for some years, but also finalist, and Swiatek there. It's tough. I actually think when I come back to you with the results, we are probably going to have a 50% success rate, purely because it is that close and it is so hard to call. And again, it's because these players, they're that close as far as rankings, etc. are concerned. All right, Alcaraz and De Minaur. This is fun, but it's also absolutely, there's going to be some bias here because you all know Beyond Top 10 Tennis is based in Australia. Look, the lead up to the Australian Open, Alcaraz De Minaur, they had a practice match or exhibition match. Alcaraz won, I'm going to say, quite cleanly. Alex just played awesome against Bublik. And I really think if Alex gets through, you just have to. Look, it's probably 70-30, but I'm going to tip Alex. Being transparent that there is that bias there. I am being subjective, not objective from that standpoint. All right. Zverev and Teen played phenomenal against Medvedev, but look, Zverev's been playing some really good tennis. You need to put Zverev down. Mazzetti and Djokovic. Look, that's really hard to call. You know how well Djokovic has played historically in Australia. Like, you really do. I think it's hard to pass him. It really is. It's hard. I really want to say Mazzetti because of how well he played against Fritz. But I feel like Djokovic has the edge. I'm going to tip Djokovic, but I also think, again, it's 50-50. Shelton and Sinner. Look, I'm still going to go with Sinner here, but I tell you what, it's not 50-50. It's probably like 60-40. It's closer than I think we anticipate. Jimmy Alcaraz at this stage is probably 60-42. It was that close. Zverev and Teen, on the other hand, is probably 70-30. Djokovic, Mazzetti, probably 50-50, in all fairness. Look, Sabalenka Jovic was probably 70-30. Gauff Svitolina is probably 60-40, though we're going with Svitolina. Pegula Anisimova, probably 50-50 that one, or 60-40 maybe Anisimova Pegula, but I'm going with Pegula. Rybakina Swiatek. Almost it could be, because of those fluctuations in Swiatek's game, 60-40 to Rybakina, but I'm going with Swiatek. So you can see in a lot of these cases, I'm actually going with the underdog by a few percentages, right? Let's say, for argument's sake, Alex and Zverev do get through. I'm being a sucker here, and I'm going to go with Alex purely because what we'd like to see, you can kind of see him in the background, right? You can, and this is what I mean about us going live. I think you all know by now that there's a cheeky one back there trying to make himself comfortable, so I'll just keep going. You'll just have to turn the volume up to get that out. Okay, he settled down. Well, if Alcaraz does get through and Zverev gets through, probably going to go with Alcaraz or Zverev. That's 50-50. Really, I think with how well Zverev's been playing, also how well he's been playing normally in Australia. But look, Alex, if he gets through, de Minaur, if he gets through, I think it's going to be huge, and I think the crowd really will carry him. And if he faces Zverev, let's go, because it would be awesome for Australian tennis. And typically, I don't have that bias, but with de Minaur in Australia, it's hard not to. All right, let's say Djokovic and Sinner do get through. I think it's purely going to come down not just to how they play, so their level, but their fitness. So I think Sinner, from that perspective, granted, they'll probably get a nighttime match. If it was in the middle of the day, I'd probably go Djokovic, ironically, only because we saw Sinner cramp earlier on in the week. So let's just go with favourites here. It's 50-50. Maybe it's 20-80. On the women's side, because there's such a huge bias I'm admitting there, it'd be awesome to see. Let's go with Swiatek. I believe she'd regain the #1 ranking. Let's go if it's Sinner and de Minaur. Let's go with de Minaur, purely because it not only would it push him inside the top 5, I just think it would be amazing. But full transparency, the likelihood of both of them happening, it's not that high. So there is a bit of bias, absolute. Well, maybe more than a bit. But when you're looking at Sabalenka, yeah, Svitolina, Gauff, I've got Svitolina, potentially Gauff. Gauff could very well get past Sabalenka, make the finals. Pegula, Anisimova could get through. And if it is Rybakina gets through over Swiatek, I would probably put Rybakina over Anisimova. So then if it's Gauff, Rybakina, for example, in the final, probably going to say Rybakina. Let's say Alcaraz gets through, Zverev gets through. I'm going to put Alcaraz there. Mazzetti, or if Djokovic gets through, over Sinner. And let's say it's Djokovic and Alcaraz in the final, for example. Let's go with Alcaraz on fitness as well. Different combinations. Let's say Zverev gets through to the final. He gets to face off against a Shelton, for example, has a huge breakthrough. Although I think it's going to be a lot for Shelton to get over Sinner and then potentially Djokovic and or Mazzetti. You still need to go with Zverev. If Djokovic does get through, and yeah, there are so many different combinations, but it has to be, you have to put Sinner, Alcaraz, potentially de Minaur, or Sinner, de Minaur, Alcaraz. I've got de Minaur down. Also, you have to put, say, Sabalenka, Gauff, Rybakina. But look, I've got Swiatek, Pegula, maybe Anisimova, maybe. Again, you've got the top 6 players in the world that have made the quarters. And with how well they've been playing, Sabalenka's been playing huge. Gauff's been playing some good tennis. Svitolina's been playing great tennis. Imagine Svitolina making the final. That would be a heart puller for her. Pegula making the final. And yeah, Rybakina, it's been some time since she's made a final. It'll be huge. But again, I've got Swiatek. This is really hard. We know Zverev's made a final before, but if de Minaur made a final, that'd be huge as well. Djokovic, a final again in Australia, I think would be huge. Shelton making his first Grand Slam final would be huge. look, out of all the players, Svitolina and Pegula have not made a Grand Slam final or won. Obviously, we've got discounting Jovic there. We'll say discount 10 from this side, on the men's side, but De Minaur hasn't made a Grand Slam final, and Mazzetti has not made a Grand Slam final, and Shelton has not made a Grand Slam final. I'm only respectfully discounting the 10 and Jovic because of their rankings, and they, on paper, they're not obviously a part of the top 6. Shelton's a top 10. So you have 7 of the best players in the world, of the top 8 in the quarters, plus 10. On the women's side, you've got 6 of the best. Svitolina's just outside the top 10. Maybe after this Australian Open, she might get closer inside the top 10. And then you have Jovic. So Team and Jovic are the anomalies. They're both seeded. So actually on both sides, all seeded. So in the quarters, everyone's seeded. Which again is really cool to see, because there's typically we have that little anomaly that does make their way through, but still Jovic team respectively are the anomalies themselves. But I think it's going to be really interesting either way how it pans out. All right, that's today's episode. Thank you so much for listening. To grab a copy of any one of my 14 books, you can find them on AM8 International or Amazon. Again, irrespective of where you're based in the world. Any comments or questions, head to AM8 or Topic Thread, or leave comments directly on YouTube or Spotify. To interact with Beyond Top 10 Tennis, catch up on our blogs, or sign up to my newsletter, head to AM International, and remember to check out Pink Octopus Books to Spruik. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe, like, share, and or all of the above. Beyond Top 10 Tennis exists for you, so please consider sharing us near and far. Look, and if you're serious about heading towards the top 10 or want to know what your game's missing to secure that maiden Grand Slam or more, don't be shy and come and say hi. All right. On that note, thank you so much for listening. I'm so incredibly grateful. I'm your host, Dr. Ashley Morgan Berge, and this is Beyond Top 10 Tennis, and I'll see you next time.